Welcome to the Valley Girls, the weekly podcast where we explore everything there is to see, do, try, eat, and experience in New York's Hudson Valley by talking to the makers, the doers, the growers, the creators, and all the unique voices of the Hudson Valley. We're telling the Hudson Valley's story one episode at a time. I'm Jenny Leifer, a lifelong Hudson Valley resident. When I'm not co-hosting Valley Girls, you'll find me talking all about health and wellness, finding the best gluten-free eats in the Hudson Valley, and giving back to the community through volunteerism and service.
And I'm Jennifer Santiago, a Hudson Valley native who has spent the past 20 years living in Texas. I'm currently splitting my time between Texas and the Hudson Valley as I'm in the process of moving back, and I'm so excited to explore and rediscover everything I love about the region, including hiking, history, and the local arts scene.
Today, we're talking to Danielle Centofanti-Davidson. Danielle is a native of Westchester County. She grew up in Tarrytown, lived in the city after attending Marist College, and moved back to Sleepy Hollow a few years ago. Since moving back, Danielle has started her own business, Main Street Business Strategies, a marketing practice for small and medium-sized businesses in and around the Hudson Valley. She is also the president of the Rivertowns Chamber of Commerce. Danielle loves hiking and walking along the Hudson River and exploring cafes, restaurants, bars, and activities with her husband. Danielle, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Marist College. I'm a Poughkeepsie girl. I grew up very close to Marist College.
Oh, awesome. You know what's so funny about it is when I was younger, I wanted to be a chef. So my parents would always take me up to the Culinary Institute, which is right down the street from Marist.
Yep.
And that ended up not working out. I went to University of Rhode Island for my first year and ended up transferring over to Marist. And it's just so funny how I was going up that way for so long and then ended up going to the school next door.
Yeah, you end up where you're meant to end up. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on at the culinary, though. We'll have to do an episode about that. They're putting up a couple hotels and a bunch of restaurants and really developing that area around the school.
Yeah, it's great that there's, Vassar and Marist and CIA all right near each other, because I feel like it's the potential for it to be a real college town is there. There are little pockets for each of the colleges, but it would be great if there's kind of like triangulation between all of them.
Yeah,
absolutely. And my husband went to Marist as well. He loved it there.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we mentioned you're the president of Rivertowns Chamber of Commerce. What exactly do we mean by Rivertowns?
Yeah, so there's kind of two definitions, really. I mean, when we think about the Rivertowns, really that can kind of cover both New Jersey side and New York side. But when it comes to the Chamber of Commerce and when we're thinking about, taking the Metro North Hudson line up, we're really talking about, I'll go south to north, Hastings, Dobbs Ferry, Ardsley, which is kind of landlocked actually between Irvington, Hastings, and Dobbs Ferry, but it's right in that center area, so we still consider it as part of a river town. Irvington, Tarrytown, Sleepy Hollow, and then farther up we have Ossining and Croton. Proximity-wise, a little bit farther up, they're not as interconnected as the former, but definitely still kind of in that same area. So the Rivertowns Chamber of Commerce specifically oversees 4 villages of those that I mentioned. So Hastings, Dobbs, Irvington, and Ardsley together. But I live in Sleepy Hollow and I grew up in Tarrytown, so I'm very familiar with all of them.
So I mentioned this to you when we were planning our interview. Our other college bestie, Brian Gottlock, lives in Sleepy Hollow with his husband and their 4 kids. Yeah. So I have spent time in Sleepy Hollow. I haven't explored it extensively because when I'm there, I'm just the passenger princess and Brian just takes me where he wants to go, which is generally the cemetery, which is valid because the cemetery is amazing.
Yeah.
But so I would love to dig in and spend more time around the river towns. And you mentioned the Metro North, the Hudson Line. That's my life. I love the train. I love just the zen of just sitting there and watching the river go by. So you obviously know your way around Westchester. What are some great itineraries, great ways to spend a day in Westchester, and particularly bonus if they're accessible by Metro North for people who maybe want to come up from the city or, come down from Poughkeepsie and just spend a day?
Yeah, and thinking about this, I've specifically tailored it to people coming off of the train station. It's just
Nice.
one, as I mentioned, there are a number of the river towns that are so close in proximity. They're interconnected through other areas, whether it's the aqueduct, the Old Croton Aqueduct that goes between the villages, or it's the river walks. So it's really easy to kind of move between all of them if you have the time. But of course, you can get off at each of the train stops, and hop along each. But the first that I've been thinking about is within Tarrytown and Sleepy Hollow, and actually, Sleepy was originally North Tarrytown, so they have the same zip code. Um, Sleepy Hollow was kind of rebranded. I believe it was between the late 70s and early 90s, I want to say. Um, anyway, the train
That's
station.
some wild marketing hubris to just be like, let's rebrand this entire city. So
I know,
good for them.
I know. Irvington with the history there with Hudson Irving, and also with the legend of Sleepy Hollow. It's capitalized on it. There's so much more they can do to capitalize on it. I feel personally, but yeah, I mean, it's great that they've done it. The Sleepy Hollow High School has the mascot as the headless horseman. It's all over the place. Our our fire hydrants are black and orange. We dive into it. So so the first I was thinking about is specifically for Tarrytown and Sleepy Hollow. Tarrytown train station is kind of positioned right in the center of both towns, right? So getting off the Tarrytown train station, we have the Tarrytown Bakehouse, which is great to just stop, grab a coffee, and then head across the train tracks and walk over to the River Walk, which kind of connects Tarrytown and Sleepy Hollow. You would never know that they were different, towns at all. But it's a lovely walk, and, you could spend a decent amount of time there and end up at the Sleepy Hollow lighthouse. And there's a park at the end of the trail there as well. There is a beautiful mural along the river walk as well. A lot of that area is brand new. They're building it up. Actually, we have a new building development and housing development happening by the water called Edge on Hudson. So they're really kind of building up that park area. So from that river walk, taking a beeline up Beekman Avenue to the Sleepy Hollow Bookshop, spending some time in there. It's both for children and young adults, and they have some fiction and nonfiction for adults as well. And then if it's a Saturday morning, the Tosh Farmers Market in Patriots Park, which is a hard right from Beekman Avenue, is a great time to just walk around, taste some different things, grab some food, have a picnic in the park. It's one of the most well-attended farmers markets, definitely in our area. It's gotten bigger every year. They've won a number of awards for it. So it's a really nice time. And then thinking about going over to Main Street in Tarrytown, which is about a half-mile walk from the park, and just grabbing lunch, taking a tour of the theater there as well, which is a historical landmark. But there are a number of cafes, shops. Another bookshop that I really love is Transom Bookshop. They're on Main Street in Tarrytown. And so stopping in there, and then, grabbing lunch. We have Sweetgrass, which is a really nice organic, gluten-free. They have vegan. They have all of the different types of foods, which is really great. Then we also have Picnic, which is a really great barbecue spot. And let's see, Taco Project. We have a lot of different food scenes kind of covered in Tarrytown, which is really nice. The diversity of cultures is really great there.
We love you. You're such a pro, because I said, I want to know about the independent bookshops, and Jenny said, I want to know about the gluten-free.
Yeah.
And so you've got bakeries, you've got bookshops, you've got walking along the river. You understood the assignment, and you are clearly very good at what you do. So
Thank you.
that's great.
Thanks. Yeah, as I mentioned, I grew up in Tarrytown, and it's definitely become even more so than, when I was living in the city or when I was growing up. it's become a booming place for small businesses, which is wonderful. And for diversity in business, as I mentioned, yes, of course, from like the food scene to just the different types of products and services. I mean, there is it's called Maker Central. It's off of Central Avenue in Tarrytown. It's a collective of makers that, do things with their hands, and they sell it to the, online, or they have little shops that they open up, little markets that they open up, and it, ranges from like florists to pottery and ceramics to handmade papers, and it's just there's so much happening here. So I love this area for that reason. But as I mentioned, there are a number of other towns to hop in around as well. So I mean, if you're taking the Metro North up to Irvington, which is another really lovely town and village, it connects really easily to Dobbs Ferry via the aqueduct. So another kind of itinerary I was thinking about is taking the train up to Irvington. The Scenic Hudson Park, right on the water, is a lovely little track around. I think it's like a half mile when you do one loop around, which is really nice. There are a number of cafes and shops there as well. One cafe that's opening up, it's called Don Carvajal Cafe. It's a Dominican cafe, and Hector Carvajal has done really well at the farmers markets locally. He's also done some things nationally, but he's done really well at the farmers markets in our towns and has now opened up his first brick and mortar. And stopping at the cafe, grabbing some Dominican coffee, and then heading over to Felina, which is a fine jewelry shop on Main Street. She opened just about a year ago, and she sources all women-owned brands from internationally, nationally. They're all artisan, work. And it's not even just fine jewelry. I mean, she has accessories and clothing and the whole nine, bath and body. So it's a really cute shop to, pop around in for a bit and then take the aqueduct, like I mentioned earlier, which is kind of a landlocked, it's called the Old Croton Aqueduct that actually connects a bunch of the towns. But if you take that over a mile and a half to 2 miles to Dobbs Ferry, it's a flat walk. It's covered by trees. You don't have to be super into hiking or anything like that to take advantage of it. But it goes through these really beautiful fields and some really unique homes, historic homes along Irvington and Dobbs. And you can end up in Dobbs Ferry on Cedar Street or on Main Street over there and have lunch or whatever it is. So yeah, there's a couple of different ways to kind of navigate 3 to 4 towns in one day if you so please.
That is incredible. Wow. All right. Well, we've got our work cut out for us there,
I
Jen,
know.
for our
This
next
is all
big
new to me.
adventure.
Honestly, all of the things that you're talking
Yeah.
about are outside of my my usual orbit in the Hudson Valley. So this is
Awesome.
really exciting.
Awesome. I love to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah, very exciting. And, as Jen mentioned, I mean, you probably already covered it all, but as Jen mentioned, like one of the constant themes of the show and our lives is that we love to eat,
Same.
We both love Italian food for sure, as well as pretty much any kind of food, but we both love Italian food. And I am always in search of great
Yeah.
gluten-free food. Being celiac, that's my thing is always searching for great gluten-free places, not necessarily all gluten-free restaurants, but places that do understand and do gluten-free well. So are there any other places that you didn't mention, any other, greatest hits in that area that, places that maybe you take people to, even if it's not gluten-free, maybe Italian food, places that when people come to visit that are sort of like only in Westchester places that you love?
Yeah, definitely. So Piccola Trattoria is in Dobbs Ferry. They actually recently reopened into a larger space. They were first a few years ago in a smaller location on Cedar Street in Dobbs Ferry, but they've recently expanded. And it is the chef Sergio there is amazing. His food is unbelievable. They may have gluten-free options as well. I don't hold me to that, but the Italian food is unmatched. It's really great. We also love going to Mima's in Irvington, Harvest on Hudson, which is Italian, but they also have some American style food as well if you want a steak or whatever it is. But it's really like you go there for, of course, the food. The drinks are lovely. The outdoor space during the summertime is just unreal. They recently opened a greenhouse there, so it's like a bar inside of this glass greenhouse. It's such a cool vibe.
That location cannot be beat.
Yeah, it's perfect, and the flowers that they're growing and the herbs and the whole nine. It's just such a nice. You just don't even feel like you're in Westchester. It feels like a totally different place. So let's see. Those are the big three. I mean, for me personally, and then the cookery I know for sure has some gluten-free options, so that's really nice. Chef Dave Davari is a really big chef in our area. He also owns the Parlor in Dobbs Ferry, which is a pizza spot. But yeah, I think those are the big ones for me.
Yeah, that's
Yummy.
awesome.
So also, I love that you mentioned the Sleepy Hollow Bookshop and the Transom Bookshop because independent bookstores are my obsession. We have some great ones up, in the Ulster and Dutchess County area, like the Golden Notebook in Woodstock, which is an icon, and Rough Draft in Kingston, and the two locations of Oblong in Rhinebeck and Millerton. Are there any other great bookstore places to make my little blue stocking heart happy in Westchester?
Yeah, definitely. In Dobbs Ferry, we have Picture Book, which is an independent bookstore inside of HUDCO, which is a co-working space. They're at 145 Palisades. Um, Sarah, the shop owner there, opened up her bookshop. I believe it was actually during COVID. Don't quote me on that. But she does a residency at 145 Palisades in Dobbs Ferry, and she also does one in Katona, or Cross River rather, in Yellow Studio, which is another co-working space. But yeah, I would say Picture Book, Transom, and Sleepy Hollow Bookshop are the big ones that I tend to go to frequently.
Okay, bookstore pilgrimage
All right.
coming up.
There you
Yep.
go. Brian, get our guest room ready because Jen and I are coming down and we're gonna need a place to stay so we can eat our heart out and then go book
Exactly.
shopping. So yeah. And all the other things that Danielle mentioned as well too.
So I love, Danielle, your focus on talking about, like Jenny said, those only in Westchester kind of places, the small businesses, the sole proprietorships. And I feel like you can't really overestimate the importance of those independent businesses for keeping the character of a place intact. And it's what I love the most about the Hudson Valley is that there are so many makers and small business owners and creative people, and we really want to preserve that. That's so important.
Exactly.
But also, so you and I actually got to know each other through the Slack channel
Yes.
that our mutual friend Jordan Koshai started, which is called Hudson Valley Connect. And we will post the link to the Instagram account for them. So Jordan's trying to bring together creatives and freelancers and small business owners in the area so that we can all network with each other. And you described yourself as a solopreneur and said, it's so important to have networking opportunities like this. But also, you're a marketing professional through your business, Main Street Business Strategies. And as Jenny and I are finding out, marketing is hard because you're already trying to do a business, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to do the content and write blogs and find guests, and Jenny's doing all of the back end stuff. She's editing and, posting our episodes. It's a lot. So it's also hard to, you get tapped out in your creativity. And what we're finding is it's really hard to tell what works
Mhm.
when you're putting content out there to try to market your business. And it's super time consuming. So, as a marketing professional who obviously works with lots of small independent businesses, do you have some good advice for making it less painful for those of us who are trying to do something but don't have your marketing background?
Yeah. I mean, all of the things that you just mentioned are the reason why I started my business, right? I mean, so my parents are small business owners. They've owned a business in Irvington for 15 years called Light Mirror. They're a manufacturer. And during COVID, they had to change who they were selling to a degree. Prior to the pandemic, they were selling to, large productions. They make mirrors from film instead of glass. So they're really lightweight and shatterproof, and it's a wonderful product. And a lot of Broadway musicals and touring artists were taking them on tour with them. And then during COVID, of course, those things were all shut down. So the focus becomes who is our audience, right? So we have to pivot to a different market. And so I was starting to help out market towards people setting up home gyms or even just a little area for yoga or whatever it is. Like that became such a big aspect of what our daily life was during COVID. So I was helping them out on the side, aside from my 9 to 5 business, and decided that helping out small businesses who rely so much on so many of the things that they're doing rely on marketing, whether it's, they're doing a weekly special for a meal, or if it's, a collaboration in shop, or featuring a local author in their, small business bookshop or whatever it is. Yes, that's like a bottom line. It's affecting the business, and a lot of it is affected by marketing. But at the end of the day, it's the last thing that they can actually get done is like the marketing behind those things. So what I've goaled myself on is helping as many business owners as possible, create that a longer lead time so I can work on the marketing for that specific thing, whether it's, like I said, they're doing a partnership or a collaboration or a weekly deal or finding a new audience, and then they can work on the logistics of getting that actual thing done. Um, and I would say that the biggest aspect, or the biggest question I often get asked is, how do I make the content that I'm putting out last longer, right? So you put so much effort into creating that, that post on social or the podcast or the newsletter. And then all of that effort goes out the door in 20 seconds once it's posted, once it gets sent out via email, and that's it.
Yes, social media is so
That is
ephemeral.
Yeah. Yeah. So
yes, that is the biggest thing for me.
yeah, and it shouldn't have to live and die in that 120 seconds, right? Like, of course, you're gonna get likes and you're gonna get replies via email. Hopefully, you get subscribers or you get whatever it is. But that topic that you covered, or that nugget that talked about, or uh, uh, um, a misconception about your industry that you wanted to debunk for people, is something that can live in all of the other spaces that you're, putting out. So that social media post can also be in a longer format, your newsletter for this week or next week, or it can just live as a blog post on your website. So just kind of like connecting those dots for a lot of business owners has been really helpful. Um, I think a lot of business owners try to reinvent the wheel each time when it comes to marketing. And that takes so much brain power. That takes so much effort. And then at the end of the day, you just like don't want to do it again. You don't want to wake up and do it again the next day. So trying to kind of simplify those things, but also get down to who the audience is, how should you be speaking to them, has been a key strategy for all of these businesses, right? Like, and everyone is not your audience. So we have to find the people that are coming to you, but also you can reach out to and solve their problem, their need, their question, which is why they're, trying to find a business to solve that in the first place. So yeah, there's a lot to it, but I think that the biggest piece of I guess the biggest tip I could really give is to make sure your content can last as long as possible. Repost that thing in 2 months, because I'm telling you, 90% of the people that follow you or get your emails, or are subscribers, they need it more than once to understand what you're actually saying. So feel free to repost in a month or two, or whatever the case is. I think it's important to make it last as long as possible.
That's good advice. That's also very encouraging, because I feel like we hesitate to do that. Like, we feel like we're always driven to come up with, we have to say something new. We have to say something fresh. We already told them that. We can't tell them that again. But you're making a great point that repetition is key, and you're going to have new eyeballs the second time you post it, hopefully, or in a different format. So that's good news, actually.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. I'm sorry, that's really great advice, because that's exactly the problem. Is we don't wanna, just shove the same thing down people all the time. Here it is, here it is, here it is. But you're right, there may be different people seeing it or hearing it or whatever it is, or even if it is the same people, it's good reminders for whatever it is, or spark something that's like, oh right, I want to go back and listen to that episode, or that reminds me I haven't listened to the other episode I wanted to, or whatever it is. So that is really great
Yeah,
advice.
I think, I mean, even if it's refreshed, right? Even if you like change up the look and feel of it a little bit, but the meat of it is the same,
Hmm.
is still valuable. And then the other side of it is that, our attention spans, there was a stat at one point, many, many years ago, where someone needs to see a message 7 times for it to really sink in. Right now, it's 21 times. Like, it needs to be repeated so many times because of how quickly we're moving through life. So, yeah, I mean, if you want to repost that thing, if you want to in different capacities or different channels rather, kind of share that you're having this weekly deal or this collaboration on Instagram feed, on stories, on your newsletter, on your website as a banner on your homepage, whatever it is, as a pop-up window, whatever it is, just show up in as many places as possible and reuse that nugget. I think has lessened the headaches.
Yeah, so it's basically repackaging
Mhm.
the same information, it's the same information, but repackaged in a different
Right.
form, really, is what it is. And I can understand that because, yeah, it's not only that we're moving at such a rapid pace in life, but we're also inundated with so much more information now than we ever were before with social media and everything else that we see in life. So I can imagine all of that stuff is, getting absorbed, that it's going to take a lot more time, or I should say a lot more times, of seeing the same thing
Yeah.
before it's actually getting absorbed there. So that does make sense. Sadly, it does make sense.
So, how do people find you if they want some of your great advice, either about all the things to do in Westchester or marketing? Do you blog? Do you have a YouTube channel? Because if you're not making videos, you should be, because you're awesome.
Yes.
That's so sweet. So yes, I couple of different ways. So I am on Instagram, mostly of all of the social media platforms, at Main Street _biz strategies. And then my website, I'm also doing 2 things: a blog and newsletter. A portion of the blog gets incorporated into my newsletter, but it's new this year in that I'm doing business owner interviews. So um, understanding the development process of starting a business specifically in this area. What is the red tape that they're coming up against when it's, brick and mortars, and they're having to deal with the building departments, or they're having to deal with contractors, or who are the people that they're on speed dial with, in the very early days, or, conversely, for service-based businesses, it's a lonely effort doing a service-based digital business for, as a solopreneur. It's a different vibe than starting up a brick and mortar. So kind of going into those conversations. So my newsletter is called the 411, and then that interview series is called Heard It on Main Street. And so we've been doing that since the start of the year. It's on my website, mainstreetsmb.com. And like I mentioned, you can sign up through social as well. So it's all there.
Well, Danielle, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your marketing wisdom, pointing us towards a lot of great stuff in Westchester. As always, we will add all of those links to all the places we talked about in the show notes and on our episode page and blog at valleygirlspodcast.com. So yes, we did do that. We do have a blog, which Jen does religiously every
Love
week.
it.
It's wonderful. Yes, she's very good at that. So all of that will be in the show notes, the episode page, and the blog, valleygirlspodcast.com. What do you guys think as listeners? Did we miss anything? Tell us. Do you like the show? Share it. Tell a friend. Please rate and review us, subscribe, and follow. Danielle, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being
Thank you
here.
both for having me. It was lovely talking to you both.
Thanks, Danielle.
Thank you to all our listeners. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to help support the Valley Girls, please follow our podcast from our show page on whichever platform you listen from. Leave a rating and review, and please spread the word and share our podcast with others. We really appreciate your support. To stay up to date with the Valley Girls and for more content, you can find us at valleygirlspodcast.com, and you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Links to all our social media accounts are in the show notes. And you can also connect to them through our homepage at valleygirlspodcast.com. Thank you so much for listening. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
The music for this episode is by Robert Burke Warren, entitled Painting a Vast Blue Sky, and can be found on his album Redheaded Friend, available on iTunes and Spotify, and at the link in the show notes.